make slow cooker stroganoff. It's not the usual way you would make stroganoff. It's kind of unconventional, but it's one of my family's favorite recipes. It's delicious. I hope you guys enjoy it as well. We've got some of our ingredients here. The recipe has already been posted, so I want to talk about, I'm substituting. I called for 2 pounds of steak, stripped, like cut into strips, and I'm actually using I buy a half cow every year, so I get like weird parts like the knuckle and beef shanks and stuff. So I'm actually going to use those in the slow cooker because they're great muscly cuts of meat and fatty cuts to slow cook in there. The reason they're not cut is because they are those cuts of meat, the knuckle and the shanks, and so you cook them whole, and then I'm going to actually slice them into the strips and chunks after they've cooked for a few hours and are tender and are easy to cut. If I cut it now, it'll just give me tough little strips of meat. It's better to slow cook this kind of meat, but ideally in this recipe, what you would use is a flank steak cut into strips first, and then you would do this, or a skirt steak. You could use either of those, are great for the slow cooker. So we've got our meat here salted and peppered already, and I'm going to take it over. The crock pot insert is on top of the stove, and it has been heating up for a minute or two already, so it's nice and hot. I'm going to take this over to the stove. I've got the oil in the pan, you can hear it, it's pretty hot, and I'm going to put my meat down in there. We're going to sear it in batches, and you just want to get it brown. It's obviously going to slow cook for a while, so we don't need to cook it. We just want to get that flavor and that brown on the meat. And I wanted to talk to you guys about something that's really important. The flavor in the brown also sticks to the bottom of the pan when you're browning meat. And so you need to make sure that you have an insert with your crock pot that will cook on the stove and then transfer here. Pampered Chef makes a great one that I recommend called the Rock Crock, and it has an insert that's oven safe, stove top safe, and that's really important because for a lot of slow cooker recipes, they call for you to brown on the stove, and then they have you transfer it to your pot. Well, you just lost all your flavor to your dish. There's actually a term in the culinary world that they teach you at school called the fond, and that is the term for the brown bits and the greasy oil that the meat has cooked in the bottom of the pan. It's where all your flavor goes. So when you do a pan transfer, you lose all of that. So my biggest tip for buying a crock pot is to find one you can actually brown on the stove and then transfer to your pot. If you have one already that doesn't do that, get rid of it and get a new one. Because it truly adds the most flavor to your dish, to any of your meat dishes. So you can hear that sizzling. I'm gonna flip the meat real quick. You'll probably have to do this in batches, unless your crock pot is ginormous. This recipe calls for a quartered onion, so we're going to do that real quick. I've got my mat here, my cutting mat, and I've got my new lovely Pampered Chef knife. I love it. The weight is great. It's great for prep, and that is another great investment that you need if you're going to cook anything, is a great knife. Whatever kind you want, but you need either a chef's knife or a santoku knife. They're all-purpose utility knives that work for everything. You also should get a good serrated knife to cut breads, tomatoes, things like that as well that are softer and you don't want to smush. But we'll go over that in another video that I do like knife skills and talk about prep and knife. Okay, so I'm quartering my onion because we're not actually leaving the onion in the sauce. We're using the onion for flavoring. So we're going to saute it with the meat here in a second. Once I get this next batch of meat in, so you can see how easily this just kind of cut right through that onion. That's what you want. Okay, so I'm going to remove the 2 pieces of meat I've got in there right now. I'll bring them over here. You can kind of see them, hopefully. And they're really brown. And you notice when I was cooking cooking these, I kind of just left them. You don't stir it. You don't mess with it, you just leave it in the pan to get that really good sear on high. So then I'll flip these in a minute. I'm going to add my onion to the pan just like it is quartered. And let that sit in there while my meat finishes browning for a couple of minutes. And then I will bring that over here, put it back in my insert. And then I am going to, my insert's right here, I don't know if you can see it. And then I am going to add the cream of mushroom soup and the spices. And then we'll let that cook for 4 to 5 hours. And then I add the wine for a couple hours. But we'll come back and we'll do all that together in a little bit.